Welcome back to season 4 of, well, we'll talk about this, but we've got another name change, right, Paul?
We do. At some point, you'd think we know what we are, but maybe we do now. We'll find out.
So the official new name is Humanity Working. Tell me what's behind the new name change.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's been a bit, I guess, probably quite a lot of introspection and a lot of feedback, which we're absolutely totally grateful for. Please continue with that. Please always let us know what you think, good or bad or indifferent, and how you think we can improve. So, as you know, and maybe some of our audience know as well, we started this journey as and under the name of Way Too Busy. And that really was focused on just how tough getting through our busy lives is. Predominantly focused on working people, but actually a lot of people that were not working listen to it as well. And it was really good in terms of helping people understand how to be more productive on a day-to-day basis and get through their day really well. And then as we moved along, we started to get super interested in and focused on specific ways of working, and in particular, remote and hybrid work scenarios. And so we did a rename, and at that time we called it Making Remote Work. And we got some great guests on that talked about that. Myself, my co-founder Ryan talked about it a bunch as well. But as we were kind of getting into those series, what we found was that a lot of the topics that we got into went way beyond just remote and hybrid work scenarios. In fact, it kind of got into something a lot more fundamental, which is just how vital employees are and will be to companies that are going to succeed in the future of work. And the feedback that I was referring to was pretty strong. Like, a lot of our listeners really, really liked that content. So we wanted to lean into it a bit and really, really focus in on the human element of work. So that's what's behind the name change. We think we're done with name changing now. And never say never, but hopefully we are now done. And so for listeners, they should just, if you're a current listener, you're already subscribed. Well, obviously you found us because you're listening to this. But if not, you can just search for Humanity Working on your feed. If you found us, for example, through search or through our website or something like that, just search for Humanity Working, and you should find us there, and you'll be able to carry on listening to all this content.
And Billion Minds also is in there, so that'll pop it out as well.
Yeah,
which is great. So what does that mean for the new season? How's it going to change? What are we going to get?
Well, there'll be some changes. People really do like the interviews, so we're going to be focusing on that almost exclusively this season. So we've got some great guests lined up as ever. It'll be a combination of leaders in organizations, authors, academics, but really anybody that has got a viewpoint on the future of work, specifically where it comes into the role of the humans in the workplace. So kind of like our general thesis, if you like, is that humans are going to be the difference, and that humans will be more important going forward. So that's kind of why we're going to be focusing on that. Other topics like AI and stuff will certainly come in, but it's from the perspective of the human beings in the organization.
Yeah. So obviously, usually on these we have our third partner here, Ryan. Where's Ryan these days?
Now he's still around, so don't worry if anybody's worried about his health and welfare. No, he's fine. But for anybody new, Ryan is my co-founder, and we are often on these pods together. He's basically making the company work better every day, and he'll be on pretty regularly, actually. In fact, I'm going to be interviewing him in the next couple of weeks for the podcast. And so he'll be giving his unique perspective on some of these issues, and we're really looking forward to that episode.
Very cool. So that's all the admin out of the way. I want to get right into and learn a bit more about this humanity working concept. You talked about how vital employees will be going forward, uh, and I think obviously, do you mean more vital? And if so, why? Because without humans, there are no employees, and then there are no companies, which is the big AI fear, right? But I think you have a good spin on why that concept is so important.
Yeah, and this is actually something that has been obsessing both Ryan and I for quite some time now. In fact, I looked back, Matt. I want to say maybe a week ago or week and a half ago at the original YouTube video that I put out when we first launched our company, and it was really interesting because it was really our focus back then as well. We started thinking very deeply about not just artificial intelligence, but a what I would call a confluence of trends, specifically robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence altogether. And what has occurred to us, and what we're spending a lot of time thinking about, is that these are technologies or categories of technology, if you like, that are extremely important in their own right, but they're also becoming highly democratized and highly available, right? If you are not in some way interacting with artificial intelligence as part of your daily job, particularly if your job is sort of more unstructured and results
Hmm.
driven, then you're missing the trick because those those technologies are widely available and can be extremely useful right now. And that's going to happen more and more. And these technologies are going to become ostensibly interconnected, and more valuable as they become interconnected. But it's extremely important to understand that that means that the human beings in that equation are going to be humans that are fundamentally using a set of skills in a different way than they've
Hmm.
done historically. So, for example, you're not going to be there's the thing we've referred to before on previous seasons of the pod, the human router, and Cal
Hmm.
Newport refers to it.
Yeah.
Right, that role isn't important anymore. Right,
Yeah.
just the person that effectively is performing a set of activities which could very easily be automated.
Hmm.
That role is not important, and
Right.
so that implies certain things for what companies need to do, and it implies quite a lot of things for what employees need to do as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard of this new job role that's starting to pop up now called AI prompt engineer.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
literally the person who can ask the AI the right questions. That is the
yeah,
skill.
yeah,
Not the coder, but the one who can ask the AI coder and tell the AI coder what to do.
yeah.
Fascinating. Big
Oh,
difference.
yeah, and ironically, the irony of this is that once you start to think about the artificial intelligence components as being almost like a member of a multidisciplinary team of which you are
Yeah.
also a part,
Yeah.
it becomes it's not that difficult. There are ways, but it is something that you can kind of leverage as a skill through practice, right? It is all about, to your point, it's all about the questions you ask and how you ask them and the specificity with which you ask those questions. And then, of course, to a certain extent, particularly now, given that there is, a certain lack of reliability to the answers that you
Mhm.
get, the ability to be able to act as a QA layer, if you like, so or a quality control layer,
Yeah.
um, and um, and not over index or over engineer in terms of what's of what information you're getting, particularly when it's involved in giving you information that you might make business decisions based on, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you want to see that, just spend, I don't know, an hour asking a whole variety of questions to something like ChatGPT
Yeah.
and ask it questions about things that you know about.
Hmm.
And pretty soon you'll see it make some really quirky errors. Just a reminder, this stuff is
Yeah.
not perfect, right? What
Yeah.
this stuff is something that can absolutely help and speed up certain business processes. But
Mm.
but how you interact with it and what you do with it is going to become extremely important. It's a field broadly referred to as AI aptitude, and it is something that is going to be extremely important.
Yeah, you said something that I thought was really interesting in terms of like, the people that are afraid of AI and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have sort of closed node, narrow generative AIs that connect to one another, you can have the, mathematics expert AI that doesn't need
Yeah,
to get clouded with the whole of the internet, or,
yeah,
the Python AI that just sits there and knows everything about how to write and code in Python. It doesn't need the other stuff. So you can sort of count on it. Those types of models, I think, plugged in to a series of things, like you said, the conductor of all these different AI models is really fascinating
yeah.
evolution. And do you think it's as like the more I think about it, the more I think it's as big important as printing press internet type level
100%.
stuff, right?
100%. But the one thing I would say is that it is that confluence. It's not, I mean, yes, AI
Yeah.
is extremely important. I think what a lot of people are missing is that it is it becomes order of magnitude more important once you start to think about the connections between
Hmm.
those three things and some other technology changes that are coming down the pike, but
Yeah.
specifically and most immediately AI, robotics, and automation. Once you start to think about the confluence of those three things, then absolutely. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure yet. I think it's really interesting. Microsoft did a Work Trends Index. I want to say back in May, something along those lines. It was mainly focused on AI and attitude
Hmm.
towards AI. And their finding in that was that actually many employees were kind of excited about how it was going to speed up their workflow and how it was
Yeah.
going to get rid of busy work and things like that, which is great
Yeah.
and all true.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that the fundamental shifts in terms of the who, why, when, where, what of work, those are not really being well understood yet. And they're not
Yeah.
being well understood from the perspective of the employee in terms of what do I need to be able to do. And they're
Hmm.
also not really being well understood in terms of the employer, as
Yeah.
in, how do I need to structure my organization? What do I need
Yeah.
from my employees in order to be truly relevant in this new world?
Yeah. I mean, what do they need to be ready for this? Like how, such a great point. If they're not thinking about it already, they better get thinking about it. So what do they do?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a lot, and it affects, I think, a lot of areas. So as, there's obviously like the technology piece of it, as in how should I, what kind of AI should I be evaluating, and should I be thinking about this as a series of tools? I love the point that you made earlier on, right? Should it be a bunch of like specialized AI systems in a series of that can be, connected together?
Yeah.
Is it a set of like these LLMs that are being used alongside alongside those other things? And I think it probably is both, right? There's going to
Yeah.
be, for more generalized work, you're going to be using these sort of LLMs, and they're going to become
Define
ostensibly.
LLM for just anybody that
Oh,
doesn't.
so yeah, so it's a large language model. It's
Yeah.
basically it's basically the technology that underlies things
Yep.
like ChatGPT and things of that nature. Anyway, so
Yeah.
these these types of AI tools will be extremely important. You're going to continue to see other technologies that are built on top of those things,
Yeah.
that provide additional capabilities. And I think that those are going to almost become like the super virtual assistants, right? And so, particularly as they get tied together with automation and so on, it'll just be something that we've been looking for a long time, like a super powered Siri or a super powered
Yeah.
Alexa or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's very clear. I mean, if you actually look at the capabilities of things like GPT and compare them to where Siri is today and
Hmm.
where Alexa is today, there's order of magnitude difference in the capabilities. So those will basically start looping under
Hmm.
the voice assistants. In fact, the patent for GPT-5 was just released or the patent application for GPT-5 was released in the last week. And there's a lot in there about, voice, and that's not surprising. So it'll
Yeah.
become more along the more Star Trekky, like
Yeah.
computer, blah, blah, blah. And then it
Yeah.
will, just come up with the response that we need.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
so interesting. Yeah.
that will be, super, super useful and super valuable as, like, as I say, the sort of Uber assistant for the different work, that you're doing. And then some specialized usages that come up, that are layers that sit on top of them. And then, of course, that will be the fundamental sort of interaction mechanism with the more specialized AI forms. So you'll still be able to ask all the natural language stuff, but of these more specialized, AI models. So I think we'll see. I'm almost certain we'll see all of that relatively quickly. So then the question becomes for employers: what does that mean in terms of the areas that they need to focus on? And so that if the technology piece sorts itself out relatively quickly, and you just are basically deciding what to buy and what to implement and how to implement it, as I say, that stuff more or less will take care of itself. But the more complicated questions, they're going to come around that workforce that sits and works alongside it. And that actually is much, like, order of magnitude more complicated, because what you're really looking for is a set of employees that have certain human characteristics that really suit them for this type of work.
Yeah.
And in some cases, that's going to affect recruitment. So in other words, you bring people in that have this set of skills, largely soft skills, that are going to allow them to thrive in this type of environment.
Yeah.
How do you go about retaining the people that have those skills? So how do you go about, if you like, measuring that employees have these skills and they're implementing these skills really well? How do you go about developing those skills? And you might need different approaches for people that are early in career and people that are later in career. So, because you probably need these people that are later in career, they've got a whole bunch of other skills and capabilities and wisdom and so on. But they may not be good at this. And so you've got to figure out how to make sure that they're good at it and that they're temperamentally adjusted for it as well. I mean, some people are going to find it pretty uncomfortable to be spending a good proportion of their time, if you like, talking to non-human entities, right, versus talking to human entities, right?
Yeah.
And then how do you go about measuring success? And we've spoken about this a little bit previously on the podcast, but for example, does it really make sense to measure success in terms of, in quotes, how many hours somebody puts in this new world of work? Or does it make more sense to gain a deep understanding of the impact that the humans in your organization are able to generate using the tools that are available to them? So that's quite different. And then there's also this question, which we kind of alluded to here, but it's about how do you go about identifying, if you like, the hidden talent in your organization as well, right? There may be people that with just a tweak and a push in a certain direction, you can unlock 10x capability within that person in your organization. And we've already, with the companies that we've been working with and the individuals that we've been working with, we've already seen that. So case where it's just a slight adjustment to management style or something like that. And instead of moving a human being from, like, X to 1.1x or something like that in terms of their output, you're moving them from X to 10x because suddenly they've unlocked a way of working that was different. And the last thing I would say is that even though we're focusing on human skills, it's a very specific type of human skills that are going to be useful here. And it's not, and so measuring it in your traditional way is probably not going to be the appropriate way to measure it.
What about the employees? What about, that their side?
So the employer side, I think, is more complicated in one sense, which is just that there's so many different things that the employers have to think about. And we've just outlined a few of them here, right? And there are more. The employees, in a sense, it's much more simple, but you still got to do it, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, for example, That's not the case in all environments. If I could use baseball as an example. Baseball players play 162 game season. 162, is that right? I think it is. Anyway, yeah. So 162 game season, regular season, and more in the off season, and they need to be very resilient because they got to work their way through that entire season.
Yeah.
Do they have to be that adaptable? Well, not so much, right? If you're a shortstop, you're a shortstop. You're a shortstop. You need to be able to do your skills well, but they're probably not going to suddenly move you to left field. So, and you got a skill that you need to perform at high level, but you don't have to like suddenly go from being a baseball player to being a soccer player.
Hit, catch, throw. Hit,
catch, throw. Right?
Yeah.
So there are fields in which you can be one or the other. There are obviously fields where you have to be highly adaptable, but you don't necessarily have to be that resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Here, in order for employees to thrive in this future of work, the change will be so rapid and life is so complicated and life throws you so many curveballs that resiliency is also a key characteristic. And so for employees, it means focusing on those things. And the focusing thing is important. You know, we did some research around this, Matt. It was really interesting. So we looked at things like, for example, do people put soft skills like adaptability and resilience, or capabilities, if you like adaptability and resilience on their resume? Almost nobody does. And if they do, it's like one word: I'm a highly adaptable, highly resilient employee.
Yeah.
But they don't do anything to really show that, right? To demonstrate that in any way.
Right.
And yet, these are the characteristics that are sort of more important than anything else. And in the vast majority of cases, because of all of the automation and AI capabilities that are coming into organizations, you know, highly honed technical skills will be important for some people. Highly specialized skills will be important for some people. But the most important skills are going to be these. And so there just needs to be a bit of a shift, because people label themselves as these things, but they don't necessarily actively work on these things. And we've realized that through our work that actually this is non-optional, and you need to be working on these things literally on a day-to-day basis in order to ensure that you are adaptable and you are resilient. And it's different. Like adaptability 5 years ago is different to adaptability today. I mean, a classic example that we give people is that if you think about what did adaptability mean in the 1970s? Well, adaptability in the 1970s might have meant you need to report to a new boss, or you need to start working out of a different office or something like that.
Yeah.
Adaptability recently has meant you need to work from home because there's a pandemic. All right. Adaptability in the future might be and is increasingly you need to get used to this new member of your team that is AI. Those are so the core things in terms of what they are evergreen. The way in which you sort of like stress those muscles or build those muscles is constantly changing. So that implies that you constantly need to be working on them. You're not just, I'm now adaptable. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah. And then of course, if you can pull those together, you could kind of thrive wherever the business goes, right? You could make your way. That's a great insight. So do you think that employers get this? You know, you're seeing now tons of layoffs, particularly at tech companies. You know, what's missing in this equation? And you know, did they get it? Are they seeing this?
Well, I'll tell you my observation on this. And I'm ex-Microsoft, and I've got a lot of friends who've been impacted over there, and I've got other friends who've been impacted in other tech companies. And by the way, across all of the companies that we're talking about here, there are a huge number of highly, highly skilled, highly adaptable, highly resilient people that are being impacted. And the silver lining for those people is that they are highly resilient and highly adaptable. So they'll almost certainly land on their feet somewhere great, right?
Yeah.
So it's good from the perspective of the individual. One thing I will observe is that in most cases, particularly in the larger tech companies, they're looking at this from a very macro perspective. So in other words, they're not looking at it from the perspective of like, has Bob got the skills that I want inside my organization? They're typically looking at it from, all right, we're going to reorganize our organization around some strategic goals. That means we're eliminating this department and this department and this department. And it's okay. Those people will figure it out. And then when we're hiring, we'll even hire some of those people back. I think what a lot of people don't realize, particularly around large technology companies, it's pretty darn common to get laid off in a large tech company and then 6 months later to go apply for and get a job in that same technology company elsewhere. They don't think about layoffs in exactly the same way that a lot of other companies do.
Right.
But that said, they're losing a lot of great talent when they do approach it that way. Can they get away with it? Absolutely, they can get away with it, right? They can get away with it in part because of their profitability and the profit margins and so on. But also they can get away with it because there's never any shortage of people that want to have Microsoft on their resume or Apple on their resume or even Meta on their resume or whatever, right? Yeah. So that will always be something that really talented people will want. And so there's never a shortage of really strong talent inside those organizations. So that allows them to get away with very broad brush, very arbitrary, if you like, hiring and firing decisions, but particularly firing decisions.
Yeah.
Smaller companies and companies with less of a reputation, if you like, they really can't, right? If you're a smaller organization, you are in a war for talent. The talent that you need is adaptable, resilient talent. It's generally way cheaper to grow what you have than fire and hire in order to be able to do it. As we've discussed previously, with the shift of, with the geographical shifts that are going on, and the ability for employees to work from anywhere, top employees are going to want highly flexible working arrangements, and their target companies, the number of companies they can work for just sitting from their own home, is order of magnitude higher than it's ever been. And so for smaller companies, it becomes super, super important to do those things that we're talking about, right? Having adaptability and resilience as core values, and really getting good at the recruitment, retention, employee development, measuring these capabilities inside your organization.
Very cool. Let's leave it there for now. Lots to come in this new season, I'm sure. So this is a good chat, Paul. It's good catching up with you again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. And we'll be throwing episodes in the feed pretty much weekly going forward. So look out for us around about the middle of the week and pretty much every week for the foreseeable future.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.